faculty member, extends a hearty welcome to all the participants for the second webinar, Personal Effectiveness Need of the Hour, hosted by Shakti Institute of Information and Management Studies, Pollachi. Presently, we are all navigating through the current lockdown. Understanding this situation, SIMS takes proud to launch a series of webinars live and on demand. We must be thankful and grateful to our most respected President, Dr. B.K. Krishnaraj Vanavarayar, our beloved Director, Dr. P. Subramanian, and Professor Dr. R. Thiagu, Head Academics and Program Coordinator, for their continuous support in organizing this webinar series. I also take this opportunity to welcome all the principals, deans, directors, faculty members of various colleges, professionals, and people from industry who are online attending this webinar. Today's webinar focuses on personal effectiveness, which is a universal need as of now. The discussion will be on how effectively people can make use of their time and make use of the resources at their disposal in order to perform to the best of their ability in the place where do they work. To demonstrate the same, we have the right person here, Madam Mahalakshmi, CEO of Quantum Leap Solutions. She is also an international management trainer, coach, and counselor with vast experience of 21 years in corporate training. She has conducted over 2,000 training and growth assignments in India and abroad, covering MNCs, corporates in private and public sectors, educational and financial institutions, government and quasi-government departments, trade and industry associations, and NGOs. She has vast knowledge in addressing in various forums like CII, CPC, FICCI, MICCI, and NIPM, etc. Very happy and proud to have Ms. Mahalakshmi here with us. On behalf of SIMS, I extend a hearty welcome to the resource person. With this, I'm handing over the session to my colleague friend, Ms. Kundavi Nappinai, who is going to be the moderator of the session. Thank you very much.
A warm good morning. SIMS is elated to have the diversified participants from across the country. We appreciate all the participants for joining us today. According to Drucker, the best way to predict your future is to create it. The pandemic has made this as a compelling factor for all of us to think about creating our own future. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Personal effectiveness is a behavioral competency that has to be reflected in every one of us in pandemic times like this. Every individual should possess the traits like consistency, commitment, control, competency, and creativity to win this battle, which is threatening our livelihood. We are with the right topic of the hour, with the right person, S. Mahalakshmi, CEO, Quantum Leap Solutions. Before I hand over the session, I kindly request all the participants to post the questions, which will be answered by our speaker by the end of the session. Ma'am, the session is all yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm very happy to be a part of this initiative, and thank you, SIMS, for having me over. I would like to start this session with a learning affirmation, for which I request all of you to please close your eyes just for 30 seconds, silence your mind, get connected to your inner silent center, and let a silent affirmation go off from your hearts. Lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Let there be peace, peace, and peace. Please open your eyes. Friends, the affirmation that I gave you is actually the English translation of a Sanskrit mantra, which in our Indian tradition is chanted whenever you go to a body of knowledge to learn something new. And there is a specific reason why we do that. The first statement says, Asatoma Satgamaya. The second statement is Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. And the third one is Mrutyorma Amrutam Gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I gave you the English translation. Asat is unreal. Sat is real. Lead me from the unreal to the real. Why? The world as we see it is actually unreal, but we see the unreal world as the real and miss the real in the process very often. I know it's slightly confusing. I'll give you a couple of examples. We all see the sun rising from the east in the morning and setting into the west in the evening. And we also know the sun is neither rising nor setting. It's actually stationary. The earth is revolving from the west to the east, because of which we see the sun rising and we see the sun setting. Now, this is seeing the unreal as the real and missing the real in the process. Earth appears to be flat, and we all know it is not flat, which science discovered only a few hundred years back. But our Indian spiritual scientists, our ancestors, our rishis, our munis, since thousands of years had always known Earth is not flat, it is spherical in shape. Therefore, the study about Earth, geography, what is the name given to it in major Indian languages, be it Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Hindi, Sanskrit? Bhugolam, Bhugolamu. Bhu means earth, gol means spherical. Study about Earth, which is spherical in shape, but appears to be flat. So there is real and unreal mixed up in this world, and therefore, Lord, give me the clarity to look for the real within the unreal. And that is the purpose of education. Everything else is just qualification. The second statement says, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Now, tamas means darkness. Jyoti means light. And darkness represents ignorance. And light represents knowledge. The true meaning of this statement is, lead me from ignorance to knowledge. Again, why? We human beings, especially educated human beings, we tend to suffer from a deadly virus, deadlier than corona. And that virus we call as I know virus. I know everything that I should be knowing, that I should not be knowing, that God should be knowing, and God should not be knowing also. Nobody can teach me anything new. But if you look at knowledge, it is mind-boggling. There are three bodies of knowledge in this universe. The first body of knowledge is that knowledge that I know that I know. There are a lot of things that we know. We have learned from schools, colleges, and from life also. And we also know what we know. This is knowledge of our knowledge. The second and a bigger body of knowledge is that knowledge that I know that I do not know. We don't know many things. We don't know Greek, we don't know Latin, we don't know many other things. But at the same time, we know that we don't know those things. Now, this is the knowledge of our ignorance. And the third and the biggest body of knowledge of this universe is that knowledge that I do not know, that I do not know. The ignorance of our ignorance. There is so much of ignorance within us and outside us, and we don't even know what those things are. And yet, human beings keep telling themselves, I know everything, nobody can teach me anything new. Now, this arrogance of the little knowledge that we possess, that becomes a major stumbling block in the path of growth and development in our lives. And therefore, our ancestors said, you start a learning experience after the acknowledgement of your ignorance. Yes, I know a few things, but I don't know many things. Lord, give me the humility, the humbleness to learn what I don't know in life. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. And the third statement is, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. From death, lead me to immortality. Now, what is death and what is immortality? We will not get into that discussion. It is a huge subject. Let there be peace, peace, and peace. Now, this is the affirmation with which we are starting the learning today. And the topic is what? Personal effectiveness, need of the hour. Now, what is effectiveness? I would like to explain this with the help of a small story. I have a friend in Hyderabad who had to go to this place called Kurnool, roughly about maybe 300, 350 kilometers from Hyderabad. And generally, people go by road. Car or bus, you reach in 4 to 5 hours time. But he decided to go by train. Went to the railway station, boarded the train, Venkatadri Express, name of the train, goes from Hyderabad to Tirupati, passes through Kurnool. He kept the luggage in the berth, met the TT and very innocently asked him this question, what time does this train reach Kurnool? And the TT said 12:30 to 1 in the night. And my friend got worried. He looked at the TT and said, sir, the moment you board the train and lie down in the berth, our Indian Railways, there is so much of shaking, jerking, horizontally, vertically, in all the directions. Immediately, you go to sleep. I'm a sound sleeper, he said, and for me to get up at that deadly hour of night, 12:30 to 1, is very, very difficult. Therefore, please do me a favor, he said, when the train reaches Kurnool, please wake me up. The TT was a good person. He said, no problem, you go and sleep, I will wake you up. And this fellow went and slept. Sure enough, when he got up in the morning, he found himself at Tirupati station. Now he was very upset. He met the TT and asked him, sir, how many times I requested you yesterday and you agreed also to wake me up when the train reached Kurnool, but now I find myself at Tirupati. Why you did not wake me up? For which the TT said, look, my dear friend, if you find yourself at Tirupati, it is your problem, it is not mine. Last night, the train reached Kurnool exactly at 12:45. I came to your berth. I whispered your name, you did not get up. I shouted your name, you did not get up. I tickled your body, you did not get up. Therefore, what could I have done? Therefore, I left you. Now, anyway, having come to Tirupati, you know Lord's Town, go to Tirumala, have darshan, and evening, you come back to the railway station. Same train goes back to Hyderabad, passes through Kurnool, and I will wake you up at Kurnool this time, he said. My friend, he had no other option. He went to Tirumala, had darshan, and evening, he came back to the railway station. Same time, same train, same TT also. Again, he met the TT and asked him the same question. Sir, what time does this train reach Kurnool? And the TT said, 12:30 to 1 in the night. Because in the return journey also, it passes through Kurnool exactly at the same time. Now he got very worried. He looked at the TT and said, sir, today itself, my whole day gone waste. I had very important meetings, appointments. With great difficulty, I have rescheduled them for tomorrow. And therefore, in this return journey, I really don't know what you're going to do. Somehow, you have to wake me up when the train reaches Kurnool, he said. For which the TT said, friend, I will try all the civilized methods that I know of to wake up sleeping people. And you don't get up with all those methods. Now you tell me, what should I do if you refuse to get up, he said. For which my friend said, sir, you try all the civilized methods. And still, if I don't get up, one final favor, physically lift me up from the berth and throw me out in the platform. I have to get down at Kurnool, come what may, he said. And the TT said, okay, for your sake, I'm willing to do that also. And this fellow went and slept. Good to see. The next day when he got up, he found himself back at Hyderabad station. 2 days wasted, time, money, energy, everything got wasted. He could not complete all the important work. And this time, he could not control his temper. He looked out for the TT. TT was standing in the platform, rushed towards him, caught him by the collar of his collar, gave him 2-3 solid shake-ups, and started shouting at him, abusing him, using the choicest expletives of the English language. Now, this fellow is going on shouting at him and abusing him, but the TT is looking at him as if he's looking at the 8th wonder of the world with a shocked expression on his face. A small crowd gathered around them, and one person from the crowd stepped forward out of curiosity, looked at the TT and asked him, sir, what is happening here? You're a government servant. He's just an ordinary passenger. He's going on shouting at you, abusing you, using filthy language, and you don't even reply him. Don't you have any self-respect? For which the TT, with a blank expression on his face, looks at this person and tells him, I know, my dear friend, I'm a government servant and he's just an ordinary passenger. I have a lot of self-respect also. But what I'm thinking in my mind is, if this person is shouting at me this much, what is that person doing whom I threw off at Kurnool last night? So what did the TT do? disposed of the wrong soul, isn't it? Now, if you look at the action of the TT, appears to be effective because he has done a lot of work. But would we call that as effectiveness? No, simply because the action of the TT did not take him towards the fulfillment of the responsibility given to him. What was the responsibility given to him? Try all the methods. Still, if you are not able to wake up the person, throw away the person, but the right person. The TT did everything right, excepting choosing the wrong person. Therefore, my dear friends, effectiveness in life is context-oriented action, to do the right things. And right things are those things which will take us towards the fulfillment of the responsibilities of our life, the goals of our life, the destinations of our life. Busyness is not equal to effectiveness. We can keep ourselves very, very busy, but at the end of the day, we look back into our day, our responsibilities are somewhere, our goals are somewhere, and if we are going somewhere else, that is not effectiveness. We just had a busy day. In fact, two words in English are very important for life. One is effectiveness, which means to do the right things, and the second word is efficiency. Now, efficiency is doing them in the right manner. One without the other will leave us incomplete in life. Personal effectiveness. Now, what does personal mean? Personal, to a lot of us, would mean what belongs to me, my personal stuff. Now, this word personal is imported from Greek, and the root word of this word in Greek is persona, and persona means a mask. All of us are wearing a mask. I'm not talking about the mask that we are wearing today, the COVID times mask. I'm talking about an invisible mask. Outside the mask, there is an unreal face we project to the external world. And behind the mask, there is a real face that we protect from the external world. And what is the face that we want to project? All that is good in us, all that is beautiful in us, and some good that we don't have also, we pose, we fake. We want the external world to look at a beautiful face. And what is it that we don't want to project? All that which is bad in us, negative in us, ugly in us, we don't want anybody to see. So there is a projection of an unreal, beautiful face to the external world. And behind the mask, there is a protection of a real, but not that pretty face from the external world, because of which we go through a lot of stress in life. Now, this talk will help you to remove this mask, come in touch with the real potential that we are, and unleash this potential so that we can handle all life situations, including a pandemic, effectively and efficiently. Why this is need of the hour? I would like to show this slide. I want all of you to look at this slide. The name of this principle is HERO principle. Now, if you look at it, HERO is written vertically here, H-E-R-O, HERO, and H stands for happenings. Life is nothing but a series of happenings. And over happenings, we don't have any control. Your boss calls and shouts at you, is a happening. Your students are being mischievous in your class, is a happening. Your life partner is irritating you, is a happening. Your son is not listening to you, is a happening. There is a pandemic out, it's a happening. We did not ask for it. Therefore, happenings are not in our hand to control. And O stands for outcome. Every happening will have an outcome. And if you are smart, the outcome is always in your control, because the outcome is based on the middle two letters E and R. And E stands for evaluation. How are you evaluating this happening? You can evaluate a happening with a positive mind. Now, positive mind means what? A mind which is effective as well as efficient. And when you evaluate a happening with a positive mind, you have the clarity to look at the happening as what is as is and what is not as not. And therefore, you start taking action on the happening. And therefore, your action becomes a response. And whenever you start responding to life happenings, the O outcome is always powerful. Now, same happening, you can evaluate with a negative mind also. A negative mind is a whining mind, is a complaining mind. And when you evaluate the happening with the negative mind, you don't see the reality of the situation. You don't see the happenings. You see the stories born out of a negative mind around the happening. And you start taking action on the stories of this negative mind, and therefore your actions will become reactions. And whenever you start reacting to life happenings, the O outcome is going to be painful. So the power or the pain we are going to see in this world after this pandemic is never because of this happenings. It is always because of the quality of your mind with which you're going to evaluate the happening. Evaluate with a positive mind. You develop the ability to see the happening as what is as is, and therefore you will respond to that, resulting in power. And if you evaluate it with a negative mind, you're going to take actions on the stories born out of the negative mind, and therefore your actions are going to be reactions, which is going to give you pain in life. So how to develop this positive mind? Please understand, friends, I want you to look at this slide now. A positive mind is 100% effective and 100% efficient. Now, if you learn to handle the external world, you will become 100% effective. And efficiency is all about internal world management. Please understand, we live in two worlds simultaneously. There is an external world in which we are living, and there is a world which is inside us. We need to handle both these worlds in a wise and powerful manner. And for handling this external world, we require management skills. And internal world management is all about spiritual skills. And those skills are, I want you to look at this clearly. Management skills like interpersonal skills, time management, goal setting and achievement, leadership, conflict resolution, decision making, many more skills will get added to this based on your roles and responsibilities. And internal world management, you need to develop the spiritual skills of how do you handle your body, your speech, your emotions, your thoughts, and the self. Now, these are your internal departments. I'm going to present one model of efficiency and one model of effectiveness in this talk today. And the efficiency model that I'm going to present today is drawn from the Indian yogic way of living. And that model is called Pancha Shuddhi model. Now, Pancha means Panch, Shuddhi is purification. When you purify yourself in 5 ways, you will become 100% efficient in life. These are your internal departments. You have a body, one department. You communicate to the world with your speech. Behind your speech is your emotions. Your emotions are triggered by your thoughts, and the core level of your existence is the self. And the internal world management is the efficient handling of these 5 departments. Purification of the body, purification of speech, purification of the emotions, purification of thoughts, and purification of the self. Now, if you look at this model, there is a very interesting concept hidden here. This is a progression from gross level of our existence to subtle level of our existence. These 2 words are very important. Now, these 2 words have various connotations. I want to explain to you what it means to this context. Now, we have 5 sense organs: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. All these 5 sense organs work well within a range. Outside this range, they don't work. Eyes can see only with Jaya. Our listening is limited by frequency range. less than a certain frequency and a more than a certain frequency, we will not be able to listen. We cannot smell all the smells of the world. For example, a dog's smelling ability is different from a man's smelling ability. Our tongue also cannot taste all the tastes, and the skin's feeling is limited by temperature. Below a certain temperature, it will become numb. Over a certain temperature, it will start burning. So all the 5 sense organs work well within a range, and outside the range, they don't work. And one law of nature says, gross things have less power, and as things become subtler and subtler and subtler, they become more and more powerful. I'll give you a couple of examples for you to understand this. We use ice, gross, limited size, limited shape, limited capability also. We cannot do much with ice. Ice melts and becomes water. Now water is subtler than ice. It starts flowing. And water is more powerful than ice. You can generate electricity out of water. And water becomes steam. Steam is subtler than water also. And steam is more powerful than water. You can run a steam engine with steam, a turbojet with steam, basic material remaining the same. Ice is H2O, water is H2O, steam is H2O. When it is in the gross level, it has got less power. And as it is becoming subtler and subtler, it becomes more and more powerful. One more example I will give from the field of electronics. Nanotechnology means what? 10 to the power of 9. And what does it say? To put in a very simple manner, when you reduce matter to its nano sizes, where only very few atoms of the matter is remaining, matter changes properties. And with this changed property of matter, we can do wonders. For example, all of us know mercury is the only liquid metal. And when you reduce mercury to its nano sizes, mercury is neither a metal nor a liquid. It changes its properties. And from the changed property of mercury, you can do a lot of wonders. A few years back, I read in Hindu, nano gold can be used to cure cancer. Now, gross level gold can be worn only as an ornament. You reduce gold to its nano sizes, it becomes so powerful, you can use it to cure cancer also. And the scientific truth behind this statement is given in the famous Einstein's equation, E is equal to mc square. M stands for matter, E is energy, and c square is a constant velocity of light. And according to this statement, what Einstein means is energy, E is equal to mc square. Matter is nothing but energy, which is vibrating at the speed of velocity of light, appears to be matter. And at a gross level, one atom, matter, has no power. You diffuse one atom, so much of energy gets released. You can wipe out Hiroshima, you can wipe out Nagasaki. Gross things have less power. And as things become subtler and subtler, they become more and more powerful. And the magnificence of a human being is we exist at all levels simultaneously. Your body is gross, limited height, limited weight, limited capability also. You cannot do much with your body. There is a limitation. Your speech is subtler than your body. You cannot see your speech. You cannot touch your speech. And your speech is more powerful than your body. Nations have been created and destroyed because of powerful speeches given by some leaders. Injure somebody at the body level, the wound may heal. Injure someone with your speech. Whenever the person looks at you, he feels the pain. That is the power of speech. And Thiruvalluvar says so beautifully in one of his kurals, Thiyinal suttapun ullarum arade navinal suttavadu, he says. That is the power of your speech. Subtler than your body, more powerful than your body. Emotions. Why is it important? Emotions, first of all, are subtler than your speech. Speech, at least you can hear. And emotions are so very subtle, you can't even hear, you can't even see. And your emotions are more powerful than your speech also. Greatest creations of this world and worst destructions of this world have been created by powerfully, passionately emotional people. Because emotions are both positive as well as negative. Use it positively, you will create. Use them negatively, you will destroy. Wright brothers looked at an eagle soaring into the sky, passionately felt man can fly, and created an aeroplane. Somebody was equally passionate, took the same aeroplane and hit it into the World Trade Center. Huge destruction happened. Now, behind both the actions, it is the human emotions. Use them positively, you create. Use them negatively, you will destroy. When your actions are backed up by emotions, they become very, very passionate. Very important for life, because behind creations, there are emotions, and behind destructions, there are emotions. Thoughts. Your thoughts are subtler than your emotions also. You can go on thinking and thinking and thinking, and nobody will know what you're thinking. And your thoughts are very, very powerful. So very powerful that one thought can kill you physically. To understand the power of thoughts, the Nazis, they conducted an experiment. You know, the Second World War, Hitler's army, they used to run concentration camps in which they used to hold millions of Jews, prisoners of wars, and tortured them to death. It seems they used to conduct some experiments on human beings, which are generally not permitted in a civilized society. In one such experiment, they selected 2 prisoners and told them, you are going to inject a syringe into your body and draw blood from your body, drop by drop by drop, until the last drop of blood is drawn. Thus, we are going to kill you, they said. And having said this, they put them into 2 different rooms, injected a syringe, connected a rubber tube, and blood was being collected in a vessel with a noise, tap, 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 tap. It seems after a couple of hours, one of the prisoners, they blindfolded, after which the drawing of the blood was stopped, but this noise, tap, 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 was continued through some other external source, some other external device. And you will be surprised to know, within 2-3 days of time, at different points of time, both of them died. Now, the first prisoner, medically, physiologically, he did not have any reason to live. The last drop of blood was gone. He had to die, and therefore he died. What killed the second prisoner? Fear. And fear is nothing but a thought in your mind. It is not a tumor sitting in your body. Because before being blindfolded, he saw the blood going. He listened to the sound, tap, tap, tap. After being blindfolded, the drawing of the blood was stopped, which he could not see, but he continued to listen to this sound, tap, 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 and every tap, his mind believed, 1 drop of blood is gone. Another tap, another drop of blood gone. 1 more tap, 1 more drop of blood gone. Blood is going out of my body, out of my body, out of my body. This one thought kills him physically. One thought can kill you. 75% of snakes of this world are non-poisonous. Yet, 75% of people who are bitten by snakes die. Again, out of fear. There is no poison in the snake. In fact, there is so much of poison in us. The snake should die. Snakes don't die. We die. Because we are fitted with this explosive device called mind, which has the thinking ability, and we go on thinking negatively, 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 and we create what we don't want to happen in our life. Therefore, somebody said so beautifully, whatever you are in your life today, you are nothing but a sum total of all the thoughts that you have thought so far in your life. And therefore, if you don't like something in your life, don't blame anybody, blame yourself, because you created them. How? By entertaining those quality of thoughts in our mind, they got created. And that is the power of your thought. And that's what Krishna looks at Arjuna in Gita and says, Uddharet Atman Atmanan na Atmanan avasadayet Atmaiva Atmano Bandhuhu Atmeva Rupur Atmanaha, he says. Which means what? Lift yourself by your own self. Motivate yourself by your own self, O Arjuna, he says. Na Atmanan avasadayet. Never entertain any negative thoughts at all. Why? Because Atmaiva Atmano Bandhuhu, Atmeva Rupur Atmanaha. Your mind can be the best friend. Your mind can be the worst enemy. A mind filled with positive thoughts becomes your best friend. And mind which is infested with negative thoughts becomes your worst enemy. And my guru, my master, he says, your life is a lock and mind is the key. Turn the key in the wrong direction, lock locks. You live in bondage, and turn the key in the right direction. Lock unlocks, you live in freedom. Your thoughts are very, very subtle. They are very, very powerful. 100% physiological, psychological diseases. Mind is the source, unclear mind. And even that is not a shock. A huge percentage of physiological diseases, medical science today classifies them as psychosomatic in nature. Now, psycho means mind, soma means body. The root cause of the disease is somewhere in the mind. Months later, years later, it manifests in the form of disease in your body. Your thoughts are very, very powerful. And how are you going to use them during this time of pandemic? Are you going to make them your best friend? Or are you going to allow to become victim of your negative thoughts? A positive thought-oriented mind sees this as an opportunity to go to the next phase of your life. A couple of days back, our Prime Minister said, yes, there is a difficulty, but post-COVID is going to belong to India. And can you be that person who can use your thoughts positively to go to the next level in your life? And the core level of your existence is the self. Now, self means the causal force because of which we are alive, because of which we can see, hear, smell, taste, or feel. And that self is so very subtle that we don't even realize the existence of the self in our body. And it is so very powerful. There is a research in sociology which says 94% of people of this world are ordinary people. They live ordinary lives. 6% of people become extraordinary in life. They lead extraordinary lives. And the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is extraordinary, the extra depth that we go within ourselves to come in touch with the potential of the self, and the extra effort that we put in to unleash this potential, we will become extraordinary in life. So when you learn to handle these 5 internal departments in a very wise and powerful manner: purification of body with good health practices, purification of speech with your excellent communication skills of what to speak, how to speak, when to speak, purification of emotions, heightening the impact of positive emotions, bringing down the impact of negative emotions, and purification of thoughts, making your mind your friend, and purification of the self, unleashing the potential which is given to all of us. You will become 100% efficient in life. One more model, I want to present an effectiveness model. This is based on a research conducted by Harvard University. There are many, as I said earlier, there are many skills we need to learn to become effective in life. And I'm going to present one model out of that based on Harvard University's research. Harvard conducted this research. It studied thousands and thousands of successful people to understand what contributes to people's success. First of all, the reason for this research was Harvard being a top-class university, they observed a trend. Their toppers, they're not being hugely successful. Average students, they're being more successful. And they thought if everything is required to be successful in life is taught by us, the toppers should be more successful than the average students, but it is not so. So they wanted to find out what contributes to people's success, which is not taught in Harvard. And the result says, it seems 35% of contribution to a person's success is the knowledge of the subject, the field that you are engaged in, the subject knowledge, the technical skill. It contributes 35%. And the 65% is contributed by what they call as people skills, interpersonal skills. How do you effectively manage people? How do you interact with people? While interacting with people, are you building bridges with them, or are you erecting walls amongst them? How do you appreciate people? How do you acknowledge people? How do you work in teams with people? And this people skills contributes 65% to a person's success. And with this data, they arrived at 2-3 models of people skills, out of which I want to present one beautiful model, which is called as 4A model. And the 4 A's of this model are affiliation, attention, appreciation, and acknowledgement. Now, all these words start with A, and therefore this is 4A model. Affiliation means what? To relate to connect to. And in the larger canvas of your life, your ability to create a team and work in a team. Please understand, friends, however intelligent you are individually, there is a limit to what you can achieve in life. Behind every success, there is always a team. I can go on giving you a lot of examples to prove this. Have you observed birds flying, especially longer distances? They make a typical formation, the inverted V formation. You know why? Because birds instinctively know to fly in this formation is to my advantage. You take 10 birds independently flying a distance of 10 kilometers, for which, let us say, they consume 100 units of energy. Same 10 birds, when they fly in the inverted V formation, the same 10 kilometers, it seems they consume only 29 units of energy, 71 units they are able to conserve. How does this happen? There is a front bird at the edge of the V, which flaps its wings very fast to create a vacuum, without which you cannot fly forward. Therefore, it flaps its wings very fast. There is one bird at the edge of this wing, another bird at the edge of this wing, and both these birds get an automatically created vacuum transferred to them, and therefore they have to flap their wings much slower. Thus, vacuum gets transferred to the next two, the next two, to the next two. The front bird becomes tired, automatically it comes to the back. Another bird takes its place. Now this bird becomes tired, mechanically it comes to the back. One more bird takes its place. Thus, flying together in this formation, they conserve 71 units of energy, because birds do not have the individualistic, egoistic thinking of a human being, which keep telling us, I work very hard. Why the benefit of this hard work should go to somebody else? A lot of examples can be said. Most of you would have flown kites in your childhood. If the kite says, I am flying the kite, or if the wind says, I am flying the kite, Or if the thread says, no, it is because of me the kite is flying. And if the person who is holding the thread says, it is because of me the kite flying is happening, it has no meaning, isn't it? Without kite, there is no kite flying. Without the wind, there is no kite flying. Without the thread, kite cannot fly. And without you, the person to hold it, the kite cannot fly. A simple action like kite flying requires a team. Exactly in the same manner, all of us play different roles in an organization, in a college, in a community, and every role is equally important. The role of a principal is equally important to the role of a teaching staff, to the role of a student, to the role of the security guard standing at the gate. Behind every success, there is teamwork. Now, we understand this intellectually, but practically, we find it very difficult. And what stops us from working in teams? Our ego. This green-eyed monster called ego, which keeps questioning us, what is there in it for me? Why should I go out of my way to contribute to somebody else? Unless we learn to handle this ego, we will find it very difficult to work in any team, including the basic team of our life, our family. First A, affiliation, to join together to work in teams. Second A, attention. We have to learn to pay higher attention to important duties, responsibilities, and important relationships of our life. You must have heard about the Pareto's principle, 80-20. This principle says 20% of causes create 80% results. And 20% of important relationships of your life, be it personal or professional life, they are going to contribute 80% to your success, to your peace of mind, and to your happiness. Pay higher attention on this vital few. I read this article years back in the Times of India. It touched my heart. I want to share with you. It seems a person spent lakhs and lakhs of money and bought a brand new BMW car. First day, took delivery of the car, was driving the car, enjoying it, and suddenly a small stone got thrown at his car. The stone hit the door of the car and fell down. This person got so angry, my God, first day I bought this car, and who's this who threw the stone at my car? To find out that, he reverses the car, stops and gets down. And to his surprise, he sees an 8 to 10 years old age boy looking at him with a lot of expectation on his face. Angrily, he starts asking this boy, why did you throw the stone at my car? This boy starts crying. Crying, he says, I'm really sorry, sir. I did not know what else to do. The person gets more angry. He says, what is this irresponsible answer? You did not know what else to do. You're playing on the road, throwing stones at passing cars. Now this person starts crying bitterly. Crying bitterly, he points his finger at a little more distance, where he can see a wheelchair lying overturned, next to which a physically challenged boy is lying on the road with scratches on his hands and feet. Crying, he says, sir, he's my elder brother. He's physically challenged. He was not keeping well today. My mom asked me to take him to the nearby clinic. I was wheeling my wheelchair to the clinic, and as we crossed the road, a speeding car touched the wheel of my brother's wheelchair. Wheelchair got overthrown. My brother fell down. Now, he is physically challenged. He himself cannot get up and sit on the chair. And he's much huger than me. I'm not able to put him back in the chair. And for the last 20 minutes, I've been trying all the ideas that I know of to stop speeding cars. But people are running so fast, sir. Nobody has time to pay attention to my need. And therefore, I implemented the next idea which came into my mind. I just picked a small stone and threw at your car. I'm really sorry, sir, because of which there's a small dent on the door of your car. But having stopped, won't you please help me to put my brother back in the wheelchair? Now this person with a little more understanding, he goes and helps him to put the older fellow back in the wheelchair. The younger brother is wheeling away the older brother to the clinic, and he walks towards the car. He looks at the dent on the door of the car and makes a decision. I'm not going to repair this dent on the door of my car, because whenever I look at this, I should be reminded, hey, don't run so fast in life that somebody has to throw a stone to draw my attention. You're also running very fast in life, friends. Life has become a rat race, and it is not worth winning if we just remain rats. Every broken relationship, every old parent who's lying in an old age home, every student who fails in an examination and runs away from home or commits suicide, every memo or warning letter that we receive at workplaces, all these are stones thrown by life at us to remind us, hey, you should have paid a little more attention to this particular area of your life. Learn to pay high attention to important duties, responsibilities, and relationships. That vital few, which is going to create 80% success, 80% peace of mind, 80% happiness for you. And that is the second A, attention. Personal life, professional life, pay more attention to the vital few relationships first. Third A, appreciation. In my corporate workshop, sometimes I ask people to close their eyes and look into the last 1 week of their lives and make them count the number of times they have appreciated people. And generally, they come out with answers in single digits. A lot of them say it is 0. I said 1 week. A week got 7 days. Each day got 24 hours. Each hour got 60 minutes. Each minute got 60 seconds. So many moments. So many people would have done so many wonderful, beautiful things which are worth appreciable. And why? Why our count is like this in single digits? Because the human mind's nature is such that whenever we look at people, we look for what is wrong in them, what is missing in them, what is negative in them, what is minus in them. We don't look for beautiful qualities which are worth appreciable in them. We are not good finders. We are proofreaders of people. That doesn't mean that we don't criticize. We need to criticize, isn't it? As teachers, as elders, we need to criticize. But what is the purpose of criticism? We want people to change their action. And if that is the right intention, even criticism is an art. Follow 3 golden rules for criticism whenever you're handling your students, your colleagues, your subordinates. First golden rule is criticize the action, not the person. Never personalize your criticism, because the intention is you want him to change his action. Second golden rule, as far as possible, appreciate in public, criticize in person. Again, the intention is not to insult the person, and therefore criticize in person. The third golden rule is use sandwich technique. How is a sandwich made? 2 slices of bread and some filling in between. That is what is a sandwich, isn't it? You want to criticize someone, first find out one good quality which is worth appreciable in this person. Appreciate first slice of bread. Then crisply add your filling of criticism and close this discussion with yet another genuine appreciation. When your criticism is sandwiched between 2 genuine appreciations, that is when you motivate people to change. You appreciate people's mind, people's hearts, open up. Then you criticize, your words of criticism are falling on a mind and a heart which is open. And then you close the discussion with yet another appreciation. That is when you will motivate people to change. If you don't do this, you open your mouth only to criticize, criticize, criticize. People will keep cotton in their ears when you open your mouth. Not the physical cotton, there is a psychological cotton. Especially youngsters these days, You know, when a teacher or when a parent calls them, during teenage especially, mentally, he has a switch which is fitted in his mind, which he turns it off. Okay, now I'm going to receive half an hour of lecture, what I did wrong, and therefore nothing falls into his ears. So third A, appreciation, which includes constructive criticism, not destructive criticism, is a very, very important people skill for us to learn and inculcate. And the fourth A is acknowledgement. Now, acknowledgement means an attitude of gratitude. And with gratitude, learning to thank people. And when I say thanks, it doesn't mean the mechanical thank you. Unfortunately, in India, we don't have mechanical thank you culture also. Somebody does something for us, we take them for granted. And the West, it's sometimes too much. Somebody opens the door, thank you. Somebody closes the door for you, thank you. Somebody gets you a glass of water, thank you. Somebody removes the glass of water, thank you. You get married, thank you. You get divorced, thank you very much. I'm not talking about those many thank yous. If the words of thanks are not backed with an emotion of gratitude, they don't have any meaning at all. I want to end this talk by sharing an anecdote. It happened during the Vietnam War. There was this fighter pilot, I forgot his name, let us call him Captain Kemp. And the duty given to him was, he has to fly his aeroplane, bomb the enemy territory and come back. This is called dropping sorties. And one day when Captain Kemp was dropping sorties, a surface-to-air missile was shot at his aeroplane. His flight caught fire. Out of panic, Captain Kemp reached out to the nearest parachute available and jumped. The parachute opened up. He landed safely, but landed in enemy territory, Vietnam. The Vietnamese soldiers caught him, put him in prison. And for the next six years, he was tortured in different ways in the prisons of Vietnam. After which the war came to an end. The prisoners were released. Captain Kemp also got released, and he goes back to US. He conducts a lot of workshops. He has written some books also. He shares this experience. It seems one day, Captain Kemp was having dinner in a restaurant along with his wife. Suddenly, the restaurant door flung open. Young man, looking at him enthusiastically, walked towards him, looked at him and said, "Hey, are you not Captain Kemp, who flew the sortie number 4320 on July the 17th, whose aeroplane got hit by the surface-to-air missile and caught fire?" Captain Kemp was shocked. "Yes, I am the person, but how do you know so many details?" For which the person says, "I know each and every blessed detail of your airplane, of you, because right from the second that I came to know your flight caught fire, until now, I was carrying a huge burden on my chest." Now Kemp is more shocked. He asks, "Hey, because my airplane caught fire, why were you carrying a burden?" For which the person says, "That is because I was the one who packed the parachute for your flight. And when I came to know your flight caught fire, I had so many questions in my mind. Did I check that parachute properly? Did I fold it well? Did I keep it in the right place? Could you reach out on time? Did you jump on time? And when you jumped, did it open up? Could you land safely? Did I do my job properly?" So many questions were there in my mind, but none of them had any answers for these questions because none of them knew whether you were dead or alive. Today, seeing you alive, that burden goes off from my chest. He says, "Thank God, I did a good job." And that second, Captain Kemp realizes the second that he jumped out of the aeroplane, him being dead or alive depended upon this person doing his job properly. With tears of gratitude in his eyes, he gets up, hugs this person and says, "Thank you very much, my dear friend, for saving my life." Now, in your lives and in my life also, friends, every second, thousands of people are packing up parachutes. All the frontline warriors, the doctors, the nurses, the healthcare workers, the boy who delivers the newspaper for you, the milk for you, the grocers, So many people, they are packing our parachutes and we don't thank them enough. When is the last time you put the head on the lap of your mother and thanked her for all the sacrifices that she did, because of which you have become the person that you are in your life today? When is the last time you looked into your father's eyes and held his hands and thanked him for all the sacrifices that he did, because of which you could become the successful person that you are today? Parents, they say, sacrifice their biggest needs to meet the small requirements of children. And parents do so very selflessly, and we don't thank them enough. When is the last time you went to a childhood teacher and thanked him or her because of the valuable lessons that you learned, because of which you could become the person that you are in your life today? A friend, your spouse. Unfortunately, we don't thank people enough. We have a taking for granted attitude in life. Our Indian spirituality says every child who is born in this planet is born with 3 rinas. The rina means a debt of gratitude. The first rina is a loka rina. Means what? A debt of gratitude we owe towards the society. We enjoy so much from the society. The schools and colleges in which we studied, we did not start them. The hospitals which treat us when we are sick, we are not running them. The banks which finance our requirements, they're not started by us. The food which we eat, we did not cultivate. There is so much that we enjoy from the society, and we need to give back to the society. And the way to do that is, after meeting our financial requirement, basic at least, start giving back to the society. Then the loka rina gets settled. The second is a rishi rina, means a debt of gratitude we owe towards the masters. Just because we are fortunate to be born in this planet, we got ready-made wisdom in the form of Bhagavad Gita that you read, Tirukural that you read, Bible, Quran, and we need to settle this debt. And the way to do that is follow it in your life first, and then start taking it to other people. Then your rishi rina gets settled automatically. The third and the biggest debt of gratitude, which is very, very difficult to settle, is pitru rina, the lineage. You know, your parents who introduced you into this world. Very difficult debt to settle. The only way to settle that debt is to live a very beautiful, noble life. Such a noble life that at least a few people in your community, in your society, can look at you and make this remark: to have given birth to such a beautiful person. What penance the person, the parents would have done. Thiruvalluvar says very beautifully, Mahan Tandai Kaatrum Udavi, Ivan Tandai, Yetnotran Kullenam Sol. Then automatically your pitru rina also gets settled. So loka rina, rishi rina, and pitru rina, very, very important debts of gratitude to settle. And for that, we need to have an attitude of gratitude. And with that attitude of gratitude, when we start acknowledging other people's contribution, you know, gratitude is the only antidote for ego. The more and more you become grateful in life for all the blessings that you have received, the more, lesser and lesser your ego will become. You will be able to affiliate with others very, very beautifully. So affiliation, attention, appreciation, and acknowledgement, very, very important model of people skills for us to develop. Because please understand, friends, 35% of contribution to your success is knowledge of the subject, and 65% is contributed by people skills. And 90% of people who fail in life, they fail not because of lack of knowledge, they fail because they lack people skills. And this is one people skill model, 4A model. Along with that, we need to develop many more models for becoming 100% effective in life to handle the external world. So when you learn to handle the external world, you will become 100% effective. And when you learn to handle your internal world, your body, your speech, your emotions, your thoughts, and the self, you will become 100% efficient. And a mind which is 100% effective as well as 100% efficient is the positive mind. And that, with that positive mind, when you evaluate every happening of your life, you will see opportunities. A new happening is an opportunity opening up. And you start taking action on that happening, and you start responding to life happenings, resulting in power. So with these words, I thank you very much for listening to me patiently. And if there are any questions, I would love to take them. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a very, very wonderful session. The 4A model, I think that is the right model at the right point of time. You have given us a very good explanation on it. And we do have some questions from our participants. The first question is from Zeenat Khan. Can the interpersonal skills and the social skills can be one and the same?
Yes, interpersonal skills is a part of the social skills. It's not everything about the social skills. Social skills, there are many more skills which go there, you know, like how do you conduct your meetings, how do you behave in public. There are so many things which contribute into social skills. A major part of it would be interpersonal skills, would be people skills. Yes.
And the next question is, at this point of time, how to engage ourselves effectively with multiple tasks in limited time, asked by Shamla Shyam, one of our participants, how to engage effectively with multiple tasks.
Yes, especially it is a huge challenge for women who are working at home. You have to handle your official, earlier at least you used to go to your place of work 9 to 5, you are there and you are totally into what you are doing. Now working from home faces a bigger challenge. You have to manage your household, you have to manage your work, etc. And if you can use this opportunity to equip yourself, you know, initially you will find it a little difficult because mind resists change. Because change brings uncertainty. We really don't know what is in store for us. But when the beautiful thing about brain is you can train it. And the more you train the brain, the more comfort. This is going to become the new normal. You cannot get back to the old normal. It ceased to exist. For many more years to come, this is going to be the new normal. And can you use this time to equip yourself? How to become an effective teacher online? You have to create an impact on your students. You're not going to be present there physically. So can you learn the art of teaching a little more efficiently, a little more effectively? And use your time effectively to learn more skills. Get into a little dramatics, because dramatics is a very important part which is required for teaching. There are so many things that we can do to impact students. And especially technology being there. Just imagine 30, 40 years back, if this had happened, our institutions would have to be closed down. So look at that opportunity in this difficulty. Today we have beautiful technology. We can reach out to your students. Equip yourself to become a very effective teacher. Whatever work that you're doing, you have to learn those skills, because 35% of contribution to your subject, to your success, is learning skills. Any other question?
Thank you. We'll take one last question. It's from Eben. To attain the aim, is it good to advertise ourselves?
It's a beautiful question. In fact, it requires a lot of courage to ask this question. We live in a materialistic world and a corporate world. A little bit of projection is very important. Now, there are people who don't do anything. They only project. And there are people who work very smart, but they don't know how to project, because of which other people take credit for that. And this is stupidity. And when I talk about this, some people tell me, no, my work will speak louder than what I am saying. I say, yeah, it may, but it takes a lot of time. And I keep telling them, what is the use of gold being gold if it does not look like gold? You won't buy that, isn't it? And I keep telling them also, if copper can paint itself artificially to look like gold, why not gold put a little bit of effort to look like gold? So a little bit of projection is very, very important so that people know that it is you who is doing this work, and that will be a part of your skill that you need to learn. I hope I've answered your question.
That's a lovely explanation from you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the wonderful session. We all enjoyed your presentation completely. Thank you so much. Dear participants, the feedback link for this session will be posted in the chat box and the description box, which will be alive only for 30 minutes. I kindly request you to fill in the feedback form. Thank you so much again, all the participants. We at SIMS will be meeting you all once again in a very exciting event like this one. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, SIMS, for having given an opportunity for me to interact with so many number of people. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful.